Welcome to the AP Cast with Alex and Phil. Listen. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the AP Cast, episode 4.5. The wait is partially over. Interim no longer. Antonio Pierce, Las Vegas Raiders head coach. With me to break this down, Alex Monfreda. Alex the homie, what's good?
Phil, man. Phil, what is happening? Dude, things move quick. You know, we made the show Thursday, talked about how we could talk about a lot. You know, we could talk about what AP offers, but at the moment, things weren't in motion yet, so we couldn't really talk about it just 2 days later. Well, just 1 day later. Now it's Saturday. The news broke yesterday on Friday. AP's finally here. How you feeling about that, Phil?
Man, there's a feeling that's going through the Raider Nation that everybody has, most people have anyway, that is one of exuberance, one of joy, and I share it. I second it. And it's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so with this little bit, and I know I'm going to kill this because I have something else for this. Just a little moment right here. Oh, hold on.
Hey, I know you're in the middle of something.
Well, as we get through this, because, you know, about a good thing, I am monetized, so well, they'll do it. This is for the haters real quick. For all of you who have said that Antonio Pierce isn't the guy, 3-1 in the division, 63-point win over the Chargers, beating the Chiefs at Arrowhead, changing the culture in 24 hours, killing the league, taking the NFL by storm, one of 2 black head coaches hired first in the 2024 season, beloved by everybody, Raiders mystique, players mystique, Super Bowl champion, Antonio Pierce. I said AT, I meant AP. The guy, the myth, the legend, the coach. Raiders, we're back. Black team, you bitch. Raiders all the way in 2024.
Man, that was pretty good, man. That was pretty fucking good. Can't wait to hear what you got when champ comes.
And to just keep it going one more time, because that was the Antonio Pierce. We're gonna flip the tape and do it old school status with the cassette tapes and the B side. You might not know nothing about that. You're a youngster. Jim Harbaugh. I want Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh's the greatest. Jim Harbaugh's coming. Mark is gonna be stupid. Jim Harbaugh was never coming. Jim Harbaugh is going back to Michigan. Jim Harbaugh didn't want to coach the Raiders. Jim Harbaugh doesn't want to coach the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh doesn't want to coach the pros. Jim Harbaugh just doesn't want to get fired by the NCAA and the sanctions that are coming that he knows from the recruitment issues that he's been producing. He don't coach offense or defense. He's just a head recruiter. Michigan is stupid, but everybody wants to keep on believing that Jim Harbaugh is the shit. He walks on water. He can't be stopped. He'll get you championships. He's the man, the myth. He'll lead you to the promised land, even though he's never won a conference until 9 years into his first college D1 stint. He's not the guy. He never was. Mark wasn't going to hire him. He was only going to give him a sham interview to help him boost his leverage against Michigan. The beef Jim Harbaugh's got with the Michigan AD, it's deep, it's going, it's not going to end. It's so bad that he wants the man to put in contractual language saying he can't be fired, he can't be touched, he can't do nothing. You just sit there and wait and you keep him until he sucks. So for all of you who wanted Jim Harbaugh, I'm sorry. But no, I'm not. Antonio Pierce, the king, is back. We're gonna put our ashes out on these fools and let this end.
Man, I wish it didn't have to end. Really wish it didn't have to end.
I know, that was pretty good, actually. Straight off the cuff. I've never done that before. That was fun.
Dude, that was amazing. That was honestly amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty good. They're gonna like that.
I mean, I don't think the message really came across about how you feel about the hire.
Hey, you know, if they don't get it with that, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, baby. You don't look a gift horse in the mouth. You just take that and roll.
Yeah, man, it sounds like you got some mixed emotions about this, but it's all right.
I'm sorry, when my coach was announced, the pimping was strong in me, and I just had to let it out and let it flow.
Dude, I love it. I love it. Dude, you're gonna have to put that on Apple Music, man.
Well, you know, there'll be enough of it. There'll be enough of it when people hear this one. They ain't gonna be on this one. They'll be like, I didn't think you do that. I'm like, yeah, it is what it is. A little something, nothing too serious. Just off the cuff. In my old age.
And that's just after side A, man. Once side B hits, oh, forget about it.
Side B, the B side.
It's over. It's over, man. When the streets hear that.
I just needed to take a breath.
But AP, man, this is good because AP cast, you know, and I know a lot of people probably think that's Antonio Pierce. It just happened to align that way, and that's why we liked it. But that's the Alex Phil cast. But you know, now the name, it doesn't have to sound expired. It never would have been, just for what it actually means. But now it doesn't have to sound expired. So, you know, it's cheers all the way around.
Bois on temps roulette, as French for let the good times roll.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And they about to, because now my buddy KB had sent me a message, and he said it sure would be a light-skinned dude that would walk in someplace, sit down, and then had a nerve to tell everybody else to stand up.
Oh man, you get it all on AP Cast, man. You get the raps, you get the jokes.
And the spiritual guidance, that was funny though, because he was right. But that just goes to show you how much stroke this man has, because when he said stand up, everybody did.
No, for sure.
Said that man said jump, you don't even ask how high, you try to touch the sun. But you ask, is this high enough?
Man, what a way to start the day. What a way.
AP, we've talked about the culture. We've talked about how the players like him. I don't think we've talked enough about how Mark likes him. Because for everybody who's brought up all of the stuff, all of the, we want this coaching process, you look at all of the coaches who have become available during this offseason, this short offseason. I mean, you still haven't seen, surprisingly, the Cowboys kept McCarthy. I was completely floored by that, but they can continue to make moves that cost them games in key situations, because I have no love in my heart for the Cowboys. Just like how I would have reached into my pockets and opened up a GoFundMe to keep Brandon Staley paid in Los Angeles. But you're hearing potentially Andy Reid might step down. It's funny because when I interviewed him at the Super Bowl last year, he told me he said that while he knew he had more years behind him than he did in front of him, he didn't really admit that was on his mind. But if this is the year, surprisingly, my premium choice for offensive coordinator may actually finally get his shot at a head coaching gig in Kansas City, and Eric Bieniemy may go back and coach Patrick Mahomes for the rest of his career.
Yeah, man, that would be quite the turn of events right there.
That's what it's what should it's what should happen. As much as I want Eric Bieniemy to be our offensive coordinator, and I really want Eric Bieniemy to be our offensive coordinator, he deserves his opportunity to be a head coach. And people have disparaged him and threw dirt on his name and talked all types of shit about him and what he can and can't do, what he did and didn't do. But in 1 year without him, I saw everything he did.
No, absolutely, man. Kansas City's offense. It's weird because just like the Raiders, we're so used to them being an offensive team, and obviously Raiders offense has never been as high powered as Kansas City in the Patrick Mahomes era. But we're so used to them being an offensive team, and this year their defense has really carried them through thick and thin.
Absolute thick and thin. I mean, the offense has been abysmal, and we've talked about their receiving core. Well, we could also talk about their running back core. Yeah, it said Isaiah Pacheco gets all the love and all the hay and whatnot, but I mean, he's a all right back. I really don't feel like there's anything special about him. He got some size. He's a little bit faster than Zamir White. They scheme him to get wide open looks with some of their exotic run blocking, because they pull tackles from both sides to lead into the hole, which is pretty crazy, but it works. And it ends up looking like a power wedge play.
Yeah, for certain, man. And even Travis Kelce, I know the numbers are there for Travis Kelce, but even the film was not really Travis Kelce like this year. He had a lot of lapses all year.
And drops. I've never seen a receiving guard drop the football, except for maybe the Chargers, but not in key situations like they did all year long. And MVS, boy, I tell you, so he ought to give his paychecks back. He was stealing money out there for the last couple years.
Yeah, man. No doubt about that. No doubt about that.
But that's getting sideways and talking about other stuff that's not Raider business. This offseason, you've had Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh, Pete Carroll, who else? Raheem Moore is floating around here as a big name. Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, and who else is a hot coaching name that everybody's highly sought after?
Lions offensive coordinator.
But I already said him, Ben Johnson, Shane Waldron, and I don't even know if he's highly sought after, but he's sought after. And then there's Mike McDonald. I don't really know if he's a high name sought after, but so I just named off 9 guys who are highly sought after in the NFL as head coaches, who various parts of Raider Nation have been screaming about having the opportunity to interview them and at least hear what they have to say for the job. And Mark Davis didn't see the need to interview any of them. So he interviewed 2 guys. And let's keep it a buck. He got 2 favor interviews to comply with the fringes of the Rooney Rule, as we discussed day before yesterday. And he hired his guy. He knew who he wanted to hire. Was 2 weeks after the season ended.
Yeah, man, and it's really not even just that. It's you look at guys like Ben Johnson, who it really is a perfect fit for the Raiders because the offense was stagnant for when AP came. It was up and down, but that's not AP's fault when it was down. It was really more of Aiden O'Connell's. But a guy like Ben Johnson would instantly elevate the offense. So it made sense from the beginning. It was a great fit. And a guy like Belichick, he makes sense as far as fit only because you look at Mark Davis and his admiration for the Patriots. He just went after Josh McDaniels. Why wouldn't he go after the actual mastermind of the whole thing instead of Josh McDaniels? So that made sense. And like you said, Mark Davis didn't even take the time out of his day to try to bring him in and see what they have to say. He just AP.
Not only was it AP, he was totally content to wait till the approved day to sign him. So the fans clamoring and Max Crosby, bless his heart, not making it very poignant in saying that AP was his guy, or he was about to dip the fuck up out of here. Kind of forced Mark's hand, which was something we discussed previously as well. But what I was getting at when I was saying about all of the 9 candidates that Mark said that he didn't even want, and asking about the 2 weeks since the season ended, Mark has known who he wanted to hire for about 3 months now. Every time you've read him say something about Antonio Pierce and Champ Kelly, it's been positive. Said, have there been setbacks? Yes, but he recognized the situation that he placed them in, and let's be honest, you couldn't for everybody who said what has he done, you couldn't have placed a coaching candidate prospect in any worse situation than what they put Antonio Pierce in. You can't change. You got a brand new coordinator who's never done it before. Your veteran quarterbacks are so terrible that your 4th round draft pick is your best option. So your offense has gone nowhere. Your defense has been solid. It had been very solid up to that point. They were trying to pass off the failures on the defense because trust and believe had Josh McDaniels not gotten fired, somebody on his staff was going to, as a buffer, to show that he was doing something to change the outcome of what was going on. And for early in the season, it was shaping up to be Patrick Graham, but when the defense got together, it became very obvious who was coming up short. So in all likelihood, it was probably going to end up being Mick Lombardi who got the axe.
Yeah, and thank God that defense got it together. I mean, it was good from the start, but it just kept getting better and better and better because if Patrick Graham was gone, I mean, man, the season might have been a mess because the defense really, it's so crazy to think about, but the defense held the Raiders season together for really the whole season.
The defense made their season. And then the whole, I think, the mantra that Max adopted, when your star player adopts the mantra that I got to do more, everybody else fell into place. I got to do more. We didn't win the game. We had a pretty damn good game, but it wasn't enough. So you know what that means? I got to do more. Then they went out and started putting up 14 points a game.
Yeah,
Defensive linemen started scoring. I'm looking at games in complete befuddlement, absolutely dazzled, just pulling my own hair, slapping myself, talking about I pinch myself, but if this is a dream, I don't want to wake up. I don't know what the hell I'm looking at, but this defense is scoring points. I just watched a 330-pound man take a 42-yard fumble recovery. What the fuck? Said I watched Jack Jones jump across the line of scrimmage, snatch a ball off, and I'm thinking, did the whistle blow? Like, is there a penalty? Everybody just standing and wait. He scored? What the fuck am I watching?
Watching 34-year-old nose tackles scoring, man, it's crazy time.
Patrick, oh, the Chiefs are playing something cute. Wait a minute, the ball's on. Wait, we scored? What the fuck is going on? Jack Jones is staring down Mahomes as he runs a pick six, looking him dead in his eye.
Stopping the magic.
I'm like, I need to take a deep breath and sit down. I'm having hot flashes. Man. But all of that complete change, a team that was dead on arrival, people are criticizing for not making the playoffs. Started 2 games below 500, won more games than he lost, and missed the playoffs by probably a game and a half. No offseason, no training camp, no preseason, no early season. Took over mid-season. So everybody would say there wasn't a game left on the schedule that he should have won, except for maybe the first one against the Giants, but having previously got waxed by the Bears under Josh McDaniels, you had no faith that they could beat anybody.
Yeah, man, certainly. Yeah, AP really did galvanize this team in really every way.
I'd say the Raiders were probably most like the Packers are right now, because I know that if they were playing, nobody would want to play them with the style that they were playing, with the smothering defense and the power rushing attack. They would have been a much better opponent in the cold in Kansas City than Miami would have. Much better.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy to think about? I want to take it back a step, because I kind of can't get this out of my mind, and I haven't been able to since the Andy Reid possible retirement has been, talked about. Antonio Pierce could easily, and I mean easily, become the best coach in the AFC West really overnight, which is kind of not insane as in terms of, well, AP is not that good and he's going to be the best in the division possibly, but in terms of just the landscape changing in the AFC West, and the Raiders could, Patrick Mahomes is going to be there regardless, and Patrick Mahomes is certainly his own set of problems, to say the least, but I mean, Raiders could really have the best coach in the division. For all intents and purposes, they could have the best overall roster in the division. They're not going to have the best quarterback in the division, but that's okay. I mean, the tides, man, the tides could be changing.
So a quarterback is only as good as the pieces around him. Patrick Mahomes can be the greatest quarterback in the world, but as we've seen, if his receivers don't catch the ball, they don't win games. And Jack Jones is the sage veteran in his young years, who knows that if you want to kill the snake, you got to cut the head off. You want to stop the magic act, you got to stop the magician. The Raiders have the recipe to beat the Chiefs, and what a lot of people still don't realize is that as much as the Chiefs can be feared and this, that, and the third, if they don't get themselves a real tight end that's the caliber of Travis Kelce in the next year, they are going to have some real problems. They're probably going to have to change their entire offensive makeup, because the roster doesn't support the way the scheme, if you will.
Yeah, especially if Andy Reid goes, man. I mean, that's a whole it's so crazy to think about how the Chiefs, they've been really trending downwards even with Andy Reid, but when you have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, it really only takes the offseason to trend back up, and you take away Andy Reid from that equation, and it's hard to imagine that they can trend back up, at least at the level they were at. And the Raiders aren't just trending up, because they're getting better in terms of adding talent, but they're trending up because there's continuity and there's a vocal leader in AP, and they're just so galvanized, like Dan Campbell in Detroit. And everything's just, we haven't seen this, and I mean, really, for as long as I can remember, if I'm being honest.
So I'm not gonna go that far and say that you haven't seen it to the level, the complete level that it's at, because one of the things that Antonio Pierce has done that puts him instantly above any other coach that you've seen in the Raiders is that he killed the penalties.
You
I
did
can't
at last.
4.5 penalties a game. The game they lost against the Colts, they had I think 9, 10, or 11 called, something like that. They doubled the amount that they normally do, and as we saw, they were calling some bogus whistles to begin with.
Yeah, man, you make a good point about we've seen it before because John Gruden was like that, but AP really does bring it to the next level.
And that, more than anything, is what's more important. Said he's got anytime you can have people who excel at something excel while doing it their way, they're good. They're going to continue to grow. The Patriot way worked for the Patriots. It doesn't work for the Raiders. The Raider way works for the Raiders, trying to bring everybody else in here to do somebody else's what worked for somebody else, aka retreads, doesn't work.
Yeah, for sure, man. And the turnover never works either. And I'm gonna take it back to John Gruden, who I just mentioned. One thing with John Gruden is you saw the Raiders improve year after year consistently. And by the time it was John Gruden's last year, which he obviously didn't finish, the Raiders were on fire by the time John Gruden was escorted out of the building. I mean, they were absolutely on fire, and they ultimately did finish as a playoff team with Bisaccia, and they would have finished as a playoff team with Gruden, I'm sure. Who's to say that they wouldn't have got better the next year as well? And that's what happens when you have continuity and you have a guy who just is a leader. Like Gruden really was a leader, and AP takes it to the next level. But Gruden really was a leader. I misspoke when I said I haven't seen it, but that's what continuity does. And AP can, when you think, can AP do it? It's like how he's done it in 9 weeks. How wouldn't he be able to do it in multiple years?
I honestly do. I honestly and truthfully look at what they were able to do in that 10 weeks, and I think there's absolutely no way in the world that this man can't get better with an entire off season. It's not possible.
Not possible.
There's too much film to watch. There's too much self scouting to do. There's too many eyes from people who know what you, because we've talked about him being hired. We haven't even talked about the additions to the staff already, or the addition by subtraction. Nothing against Bo Hardegree. Bo Hardegree came in and did some solid work on the fly for AP and the Raiders and for his own career. As what he was able to do with Aiden O'Connell in that stretch of time can't be undersold and can't be ignored. He had the second highest performing rookie quarterback in the entire draft class, because let's face it, CJ Stroud was out there doing some Pro Bowl type shit.
No, for sure, for sure. Bo Hardegree was for what he had to work with, quarterback wise, because obviously the receivers are about as good as it can get. He really did. He made it work for the most part.
And at that particular stage, he wasn't going to be able to implement a new offense, so he had to work with what he had. And he had some creative play calls. He had some things that worked. And so, but he also got shut out, and there were definitely some lulls where we wish we could have had a little bit more and some head scratching play calls. That's all a long way to say that we knew that the offense needed a new direction, needed a new plan, needed a new playbook, because what they had wasn't working and they were trying their best to make it work, but there's some blocking issues, there's some conceptual issues in line structure, team building, and some other things that just quite frankly aren't good enough anymore because they're outdated. So, but seeing how he didn't know how to hire a proper staff, he brought in two of his former coaches, Tom Coughlin, who he won the Super Bowl with to beat the Patriots in 07, who actually beat the Patriots twice because he did it again in 11, I believe, with Eli. And Marvin Lewis. Now, Marvin Lewis is, from what it's been said, is more of a personal assistant role, so we don't know what that is or what that entails, but from the way that things took off for the positive in 10 weeks, I'm A-okay with this move, and I got to believe that it's only going to help AP with what he sees and what he does, because these men helped him get to where he was as a player and enjoy the ultimate success. And so I believe in that help with his vision, because his vision and his mantra, his way and his mannerisms, his mystique is the Raiders' mystique, the Raiders stamp on it. And there's nothing wrong with getting good old game from somebody else, especially when they got it to give.
Yeah, man. And these see, I love what AP did by bringing in these two to really consult with, because AP, first year head coach, not just first year head coach. I mean, it was middle of the season, so it was really on the fly, and he recognized that, and he said from the very beginning, just by his actions, not his words, I'm going to get guys not just who know what they're doing, but have been consistent, have continuity, all this stuff. And, they've been around the block. And Marvin Lewis, for all the bad things you can say about him, he was in Cincinnati forever as the guy, because he knows what he's doing. He has experience. It didn't always work out, but he's a pro's pro. And that's why he was in Cincinnati so long, as the guy.
And the combination is interesting, because if you look at Marvin Lewis was consistently in the playoffs. His problem was he just couldn't win a game when he got there. But then you look at Coughlin, who's the flip side. Once he got there, they were able to progress from wild card to champions, and I believe they did that twice.
Yeah, they did.
I know they did it in 07, went from wild card to champions. I don't know if they were wild cards again in 11. I think they might have won the division that year.
I thought it was both. I could be wrong, but
I thought it was both too.
But either way, man, you're getting guys who know what they're doing, because Marvin Lewis was always consistent. He was always consistent, and he stuck around for so long. There's jokes, obviously, like, oh my God, he must have some dirt on Bengals owners and stuff. But man, for all the jokes and stuff, he really did have a resume of consistency, absolute consistency. And obviously Tom Coughlin, it really knows what he's doing as far as winning the big games, to say the least.
Right.
And while we have a break in the action, there's something that I've been wanting to talk about and just waiting for the opportunist time, and I guess that's now, as we have a break in the action. There's for all the people that have a problem with the AP hiring, there's one pretty logical complaint, and I'm going to talk about that. And it's that Mark Davis was set on AP and didn't have to hear at least what others have to say. And a lot of people complain about that, and I understand it. It's very logical why you would want to hear out every candidate and make the right decision based on all information that every candidate has. Now, here is why I don't have a problem with it. And it's not because I think AP is this or that. It's because it's not always the best idea. This sounds counterintuitive, but it's not always the best idea to bring in as many people as you can and listen to what they have to say. And the reason is because a lot of the times what can happen is you get persuaded in one direction off of, absolutely nothing, that you wouldn't have been persuaded in one direction had you not brought in all these countless people. And that's what we saw with, for example, with the Josh McDaniels hiring. it wasn't going to seem like it was Josh McDaniels because Mark Davis didn't know that he could get him until he knew he could get him with Ziegler. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, we can get Josh McDaniels. Well, cancel everything else. We're getting him. And you eliminate that with AP, which is kind of ironic because you're doing that from the jump by just saying, well, AP is the guy. But the point I'm trying to make is there's no a variable is added and you go with that variable. It's that you're set on the direction of the team and that's it. There's nothing incoming that changes your entire direction last second or anything like that. You're set on the direction of the team. There's nothing out of left field that changes that, and you're good. You know what you want. The team knows what they want. Everything's good. And you eliminate a Josh McDaniels situation like that.
I agree. The other thing that I would look at as we consider this is that when you look at why this was okay to do, I'll leave you guys with this. It'd be one thing if one player said they wanted him or they were leaving. It'd be another thing if it was a couple players who said they were behind Antonio Pierce and one guy that said either get him or I'm leaving. Your entire roster, you can only have 46 guys active for but you can have 54 on the roster. 54 because the last guy doesn't count. All 54 guys are behind this one man. If you get 54 people in a room right now, I guarantee you could not get all 54 people to move in one direction. But everybody in this building moved in one direction and all filed in rank, in line, behind Antonio Pierce. Just like the Detroit Lions fell in line behind Dan Campbell, just like Houston has fallen in line behind DeMeco Ryans. There's some talent differences in all of those franchises. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're completely equal, although I will say that they're not far off. They're really not that far off in the grand scheme of things. The difference is the quarterback. It's the only difference.
No, certainly.
And I fully expect that to be rectified in the next coming months. But with that being said, a guy who can come in and unify the troops and get them to believe in the vision and move towards the goal, the common goal, the shared goal as one, is worth more than a guy who's got a great plan.
Oh, dude, there's no doubt about it. And talked about it 2 days ago when we did our initial episode before we knew what was going to happen. But I'll talk about it again gladly. You touched on it a little bit. Well, you touched on the guy, Dan Campbell, man. With Dan Campbell, Lions win their first division title, which is actually a mind-blowing thing to think about in itself. But anyway, not only that,
kneecaps, and then we're gonna take that punch. We're gonna get back up, and we're gonna look at you and smile, and we're gonna bite your other kneecap.
Yeah, man, yeah. And then they go on to win their first playoff game of my entire lifetime. I'm 29 years old. First playoff game of my entire lifetime, they win because of a guy like Dan Campbell.
And many laughed at him with his introductory press conference, which was rather unique. I would recommend watching it again, but to watch and see what that is, that mentality that he brought in. But the moral of the story is, when you can look a man in his eye and talk to that man as a man and let that man know that you feel where he's coming from, you feel where he's going, what he's going through. But if he just believes in the vision and believes in and does what you ask, that you will get to where it is that you want to go together. To mean that in your heart, be sincere, and then have that be exactly what happens is the stuff that makes coaches legendary. And being a head coach isn't necessarily always about having the best scheme, being revolutionary. Sometimes a motive, if you can, men can do great things when they do it together.
Yeah, man, and it's it's not even just a thing we're theorizing. We've seen it. I mean, I just talked about Dan Campbell. We've seen it multiple times, and I can go back to the Gruden thing because that was Gruden's thing too. Gruden was a motivator. That was his big selling point, and the Raiders got better year after year after year. And we see it with these motivator guys. And a lot of people think that when we say this, it's just theorizing it, and we're just kind of making sense out of what it could possibly mean. But no, we're using actual examples of this working.
Everybody can't be the genius of Belichick. Everybody can't be the genius of McVay or Shanahan tree of offensive innovation. That's why those guys are special. Said,
Oh,
but everybody can't be the leader of men that Dan Campbell and Antonio Pierce are. Everybody can't be the guy that he comes in a room, you stand at attention, you're listening to his every word, hanging on his every word and waiting for him to tell you to go out and rip somebody's head off. Just waiting so that you when he takes the leash off, that you can go out there and be an absolute hellhound.
yeah, man, no doubt about it. And I like what you said that everybody can't be a Kyle Shanahan or Bill Belichick in terms of X's and O's. Because, I mean, if everybody could be that, then we
It
wouldn't be
would be
sitting here talking
special.
about these
Yeah.
are legendary coaches, if everybody could be them. But, man, AP really, there's so many ways that you could talk about why this is the perfect hire, and you could talk about it all the way in terms of AP grew up a Raiders fan from Compton. You could talk about it in terms of the swagger that not just the Raiders have needed, as you could see, but it makes sense in every way as terms, even as far as like a product, the Raiders being a product goes, because the Raiders instantly became not just watchable, but followable. Everybody wanted to know what was going on. And man, the Raiders just everything changed with AP for the better. And these are things that a lot of people who wanted Jim Harbaugh, and there are a lot of them, this wouldn't happen with Jim Harbaugh. And I'm not saying it wouldn't eventually happen because who knows what would happen down the line, but this would not happen from the get-go, because what would happen with Jim Harbaugh is the continuity that we're talking about, and that would, we talked about with Gruden, how they improved every year. That wouldn't be a thing. It might be a thing eventually, as I said, but it wouldn't be a thing right away, because what happens is Jim Harbaugh comes in and he is going to bring in who he wants as his guys, which, he's a head coach and he has every right to do. But it's the thing that has plagued the Raiders for so long, that they just keep getting these guys who want their own guys, understandably so, but they just keep doing it and doing it. And the problem with that is not just that it keeps happening, but right now the Raiders have such a good roster that there's no need to flip these pieces for guys that you want. So just get a guy who works with these pieces, because they're all there. And that's exactly what Mark Davis did.
And that's something that just you don't get that often. And everybody, and I've talked to, believe me when I tell you, I've talked to many people in the media from all over the place, be it Vegas media, be it people who've covered the team, be it people who are on the opposite coast, said nobody has seen a turnaround like this in virtually any sport.
Yeah, you love to see it.
This is uncharted territory in terms of, wow, the turnaround was just like, okay. So for all the preseason talk that I said about they'll win 11 games easy, and then they get to the playoffs, have a shot at winning the division, and then they came out the way they did and made me look like an absolute fool. Said Antonio Pierce comes in and all of a sudden it's like, there they are. I knew they could do it. I knew that it was there. I knew they could do it. I was just struggling to see why we're not getting there, because I'm looking at the players and I'm like, there's no way this should be happening. Like, how are they not getting this shit together?
No, for sure, man, for sure. Now the big
Says,
question is what should be on everybody's mind, especially now that the head coach is gone. The vacancy, I mean, and the general manager vacancy is technically still there, but really it's not. The one vacancy that all eyes have to turn to, and really it can dictate how the next season goes, has to be offensive coordinator. And what do you think about that?
so I don't know how true it is, but there's a famous return on the horizon, and that is the return of Hugh Jack City. And X's and O's wise, I like it. I like it a lot. Said I have a great amount of respect for Hugh's offense and his play calling. I do. I am hesitant about his ability to develop a rookie quarterback, and at this stage, and what we've seen from Hugh, especially on Hard Knocks, I wonder if Hugh Jackson, the man, is going to be right. Is going to be right for this particular environment.
Yeah, so here's my concern with Hugh Jackson, and it's nothing to do with the Brown stuff because that's everybody's fear, but that's a very lazy take. But
Yeah,
my
well, fuck you
concern,
too.
what's up?
I said, well, fuck you too.
Oh, so my concern with Hugh Jackson is I really believe he's more of I guess old school type in terms of play calling, and that's more of a veteran team style and all that stuff. And I believe that the Raiders, based on roster construction, and you got to assume that they're going to bring in a rookie quarterback. I think that they're really missing that new age play caller who's just very inventive, kind of like Bo Hardegree was. Just Bo Hardegree wasn't consistent, which is understandable as it was his first time calling plays. But somebody of that cloth, so to speak, I think that that's what the team really needs. Because when Bo Hardegree was at his best, and when he was really in his bag of being inventive, that's when the Raiders' offense was at their best.
Yes, it was. The only other issue that I found with that was that he said he would only be able to come up with what looked like maybe one of those inventive type, one or two of those inventive type plays every couple weeks. And after it got on tape, he kept going back to it, and everybody knew the score. Um, but a newer age play caller is definitely needed, which then you'd have to look at what's available in terms of new age, because those guys would be lateral moves at this point, or you could try to. I don't want to poach somebody's quarterback coach or tight end coach or wide receiver coach to give them a first crack at offensive coordinator. I need somebody to be established, to know know what they're doing, have a great plan of attack, a great way, new idea how to launch this attack from in different ways to maximize the talent on the offense. I thoroughly believe they need to get some more speed on the roster. Definitely need to do that while they have Trey Tucker already, which is definitely good. They need more.
Oh, they certainly do. And I think when I say that they need an inventive new age play caller, for a while, that's what every team was trying to get as their head coach. And that was because of Sean McVay, the success that Sean McVay had doing that. And everybody was like, well, I'm trying to replicate that because NFL is a copycat league, just like really all sports. Something works, every team tries to replicate it. But now we're seeing not necessarily teams shy away from that, but more so teams saying, all right, well, we'll get it done in different ways. And we see like Robert Saleh, very sought after. D'Amico Ryan, much more recently with what he's done. And this year, Antonio Pierce, what he did, and teams wanted him. Titans interviewed him, and we're just seeing teams again, not necessarily shy away from that, but understanding there's more options than just that. And for a while, teams were just really hell-bent on trying that. But now, because they're accepting that there's more options, that leaves guys who might be inventive play callers that you can get.
Yes, and guys that are established guys that have good systems. I've heard Pete Carmichael as well, which would be rather interesting. But the Saints, but moving the ball has never been and putting up points has never been a problem for the Saints.
I mean, that's true. It also helps when you have Drew Brees.
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely does. But but again, you've got a guy like Tom Coughlin who's going to keep it principled, believe in balance. You're going to have a strong offensive line. You're going to have a physical team, and have a couple running backs. They might get a monster back there now.
And the thing with Tom Coughlin is what we call a risk taker. And that really goes into the new age play calling. I know Tom Coughlin's not going to be the play caller, but AP to a degree is, as far as, situational football goes. And it really feeds into what I'm saying, that Tom Coughlin is going to kind of preach that mindset to AP. Not to say he's going to make AP be irrational and just always go for big plays and big decisions and all that. But, it's good that AP is going to have somebody behind him who's not just experienced at getting to the big game and winning it, but knows when to, have the balls to say, we got to make a big play right here.
Yes, there needs to be a review of balance, and I think that he could probably watch some of those games over again so he can get a feel for momentum and know what he called in the moment, and feel and look at it from the top and feel how maybe he could have did it different. We talked about it earlier. Said if you're struggling on offense and you haven't got there, you probably go ahead and take the points while you're there and continue to keep the situations manageable moving forward. If you've got all the momentum, you've been moving it with no problem, you got these guys on their heels, go ahead and go for the throat. I think some of the times being over aggressive can work against you, and I can attest to that in my own situations. Sometimes you gotta relax and take what's there, and it's a delicate balancing act that always is 2020 hindsighted.
No, for sure, man, for sure. And before this episode ends, I want to say my piece on the whole Jim Harbaugh thing, because I know there's going to be, well, there already is, and not just going to be, there's a large chunk of Raider Nation that is very upset that Jim Harbaugh is not in the head coach office right now in Las Vegas. I say thank God. As a Michigan fan, I say thank God, and not just because he's likely going to stay at Michigan, because honestly, I'm just, if Jim Harbaugh left, I wouldn't really care at all. I might be glad for that matter, but that's a different topic. Anyway, Jim Harbaugh, for everything that, here's the thing with Raider Nation, man. And I hate to say this because this is like, just throwing a bullet at your own guys, but they fall in love with somebody and they don't know shit about them. They don't know shit about them. All these guys on Twitter talking about, oh, well, Ed Dodds, he needs to be the new GM. Ed Dodds, you'd be stupid not to hire him. Tell me one thing about Ed Dodds. Tell me one thing. They can't tell you one thing because they don't know about him. They just know that he's a big name and they're infatuated by it. Same with Jim Harbaugh. They don't know one thing about him. They think Jim Harbaugh is this offensive mastermind. When it worked for a season and a half with Colin Kaepernick, because that wasn't the case in Michigan. They weren't winning games with their offense. And Jim Harbaugh is supposed to be this inventive offensive guy. When has that been the case? It wasn't the case ever at Michigan. You talked about it earlier in your probably song of the year, by all accounts, that Jim Harbaugh, where he makes his money, especially at Michigan, is recruiting. And that's not a thing in the NFL. It's not a thing. If it was, it wouldn't be his job anyway.
Nope.
And the recruiting that he's done has not been on the offense. So everything that Raider Nation wanted Jim Harbaugh for, he is not that guy. He's just not that guy. And AP might not be that guy either. For all intents and purposes, he might not be an offensive genius. I don't know. You don't know. It remains to be seen. But what we do know about AP is that doesn't have to be his niche, because he excels in other things that Jim Harbaugh does not excel at. And I say all this to say, thank you, Mark. Thank you for not being like Raider Nation and falling in love with a name, because you did that last time with Josh McDaniels. You fell in love with the name. And this is the thing that gets me, is Raider Nation should have seen that. Raider Nation should have seen Mark Davis fall in love with a name, and it just absolutely backfire as much as it could possibly be. And we've seen this happen kind of often with the Raiders, and Raider Nation just keeps falling for this trap. Mark Davis didn't fall for it again. Raider Nation tried to fall for it again. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you indeed, Mark. So, this is the AP Cast episode 4.5. The wait is partially over. Interim no longer. I'm Phil. He's Alex. And we're out of here.